It's very rare that I come across a relationship in the USA that is what I would consider a healthy relationship. I know we all have our own definition of what is a healthy relationship. But if I look at the overall how relationships function here in the USA, we're crazy. Maybe it's because I live in California. I thought maybe it's just a California thing, but then I moved to New York and I lived there. I was like, no, they're in their own way crazy. Then I spent a lot of time in Miami and I got to know people there. And that's a whole other level of crazy. And it wasn't until I started living half my life in Germany is when I realized how fucked up relationships are for the most part here in the USA. This is in no way a comparison of which culture is better. It's just my observation of how relationships function so differently. For me, how German relationships function is so much more healthier than how we define relationships and how we function within a relationship here in the USA. Full disclosure, I am in no way a relationship expert. I think I'm still trying to figure out how to navigate in my own relationship. Over the years, I've learned what works for me and what doesn't work. And I'm married to a German, and never in a million years before this relationship, I thought that I could be 100% honest with every single feeling that I feel. I could just say whatever's on my mind. Nearly every person that I know, which is in my age group or younger, they're either divorced or choose to stay in an unhappy relationship or are single and are desperate to be in a relationship. The common thread which I see in all of the relationships that are part of my life here in the USA, they're all performing. They're not being true to themselves. So if you're performing, the other person will never get to know who you truly are. And if they're performing as well, then you never get to truly know who they are as well. So what happens when you're performing in a relationship is there's this constant pressure to please the other person. Perhaps there is this idealized version of love that most people here are chasing after. So what you see on social media, what you see in the movies, other people that you know in your friend circle that seem like they have a perfect relationship on paper or on in a social setting. So you're constantly idealizing someone else's relationship, and you want your relationship to be identical to that, and it will never be identical to any other relationship because your relationship is completely unique and you need to build on that uniqueness. You need to embrace that uniqueness and love that uniqueness. The second common thread which I see here in the USA is people have really sky-high expectations. I was guilty of this. So when you have these sky-high expectations, you're creating this image of your partner, how they should behave, what they should say, what they should wear, and how much they need to provide into a relationship. And through all of these, we lose sight of who they are as a person. We never give them the opportunity to grow in a relationship. We never give them the opportunity to show their true self. They never get the opportunity to open up their heart to you because they're afraid that they're not going to meet the expectations. And it goes both ways. Also, it's kind of like a reflection in the mirror, right? So if you're expecting really these sky-high expectations, you kind of think that I also need to live up to this. You also start behaving in a different way than to be your true authentic self. So you've created this persona and now you have to live up to this as well. And because of you're playing this role due to these high expectations, anytime there's a conflict, you kind of sweep it under the rug because you don't want to have conflict. You want to be like this idealized version, which ultimately leads to dishonesty in a relationship. Most of my friends that I know here in the USA that are in relationships, they are more real to me as a friend than they are to their partners, which I think really sucks because it should really be the opposite. Your partner should be that one person that you can be completely yourself, where you feel like you're in a safe space and say anything, tell all your secrets, and you would not be judged because they love you for who you are. My first exposure to Germany was 18 years ago when we started dating. For the past 7 years, I've been living half year in Germany, a half year here in California. Since those 7 years of spending half my life in Germany, I've come to really deeply connect with people there, and I've made a lot of good friends. Every person that I know in Germany who's in a relationship is in a happy, healthy relationship. And anyone who was not in a happy relationship is now single. and happily single, which for me was complete opposite of what I've experienced here in the USA. People stay in unhappy relationships. So then I started thinking, why are German relationships so different than the US relationships? Common thread which I see in German relationships is that they seem very quiet. There's no performance. There's not ridiculous amounts of PDA that's happening. There's no validation that is needed from other people. Intimate details of their relationships are not shared outside of their home. The second common thread which I see in German relationships, which I think stems from just the German culture itself. If you grew up in a culture where you're direct with what you're feeling, then that is what you're going to take into a relationship as well. If you have two people that have grown up in a culture that is direct, when they come together, their communication is going to be clear and direct as well. So there's less of, well, this is what you said, but this is what you really meant. So there's less of conflict. And when there is conflict, then you resolve it without drama. And because of this communication of being able to say what's on your mind openly and honestly, this leads to not having sky-high expectations, because expectations then are grounded. You already know what you're looking for. You've already communicated what you're looking for. So the other person doesn't feel like they need to live up to these sky-high expectations. But also in general, I never have come across so far in Germany where a person says, well, I need this, 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 and this in a relationship. It's more about, I'm looking for someone who is compatible with my life, with my feelings, who I am as a person, things that I enjoy doing, rather than having a laundry list of this person needs to fit into this box. Which leads me into my next point in German relationships, which is this beautiful room for individuality. And I think that is something that I was starving for in my previous relationships, where I wanted to be myself, but then I felt like I couldn't because I always had to behave a certain way or do certain things or play a role basically within this box that was created for me, and also vice versa that I had created for this other person. But when you're with a German, that's when you realize that you have this sense of freedom to just be who you are, do exactly what you want to do in life, and your partner is alongside holding your hand whenever you need them. How I view relationships in the USA is when two people get together, they try to merge themselves together into one single entity. Whereas in Germany, when two people get together, they complement each other, but they remain separate. They have their own individualities and they flourish in their own individual people while still being in a relationship. But with anything, there are good and bad relationships, healthy and unhealthy relationships, no matter which corner of the world you go to. But for me, German culture really resonated when it came to relationships. So when we celebrated our 18 years together this past week, I was reflecting back on those 18 years and I realized how different of a person I was when it comes to this emotional journey of love and relationships. What I thought was love, what I thought was a healthy relationship. And I am in no way a relationship expert. I just consider myself very lucky in this department. Maybe it's because I had this exposure to another culture, so I was able to see the other side of how a relationship could be. And that is the beautiful thing about experiencing other cultures, is there's something always to be learned in this world. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know your experience with relationships, whether it's here in the USA or elsewhere in the world. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next video.